Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Energize Your Online Business podcast. Hey there, Kate.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Okay, I'm very excited about this topic because it is pertinent to your messaging for your business, which, as we all know, we've said it before, we'll say it again, is integral to the success of your business. It is hands down the most crucial part of your business. You can have the most amazing product, service, whatever in the world. If you can't explain to people why it is the most amazing product, service, whatever in the world, they won't purchase. So messaging is crucial. We're in agreement on that. But I know that for business owners, it can be challenging to write for themselves, which is quite frankly true. Copywriters find it challenging to write for themselves
exactly.
too.
Yeah,
exactly. Hard for everybody. But acknowledging that writing is not necessarily everyone's forte, we're going to get into exactly when you should bring in a copywriter to work with you on a project, because there's definitely a right time to do it and a right way to do it, and several wrong times to do it and several wrong ways to do it. So we're going to make sure that you are in a good place. We'll also have some tips about what kinds of projects you can bring copywriters on for, and maybe what other kinds you can wait for.
And so I think the first place to start is literally with the win is when you have a really good idea for what the project is. I think one of the kind of bigger mistakes and ways that projects can quickly go off the rails is when you think you need a copywriter, you go to bring someone on and you kind of hand them a mess of ideas and you're not actually sure what you want them to deliver. And sure, I've not to toot my own horn, but I've definitely received projects like that. And that was on me though, to wrangle what the project needed to be and kind of guide and direct and whatnot. But if you're looking for that, not every copywriter might be in that position to figure out and mind read what the best possible solution is for you.
Well, and the problem too is that if you're fuzzy on what a project is going to entail, you're going to end up paying more to this copywriter as they, number one, if you have the kind of copywriter that's willing to kind of guide you and kind of corral you, or number two, you're going to go down a lot of different roads as your copywriter starts working on things that you aren't actually solid to begin with. You know, I don't take clients very often anymore, but when I did, there would be clients who say, well, I think I want to do this. And I think they would get me started working maybe on a welcome email series. And they say, no, I think, okay, I know we said we're going to do that, but then we're going to do, no, I realize what we need to focus on is a sales email series, or when your plans are foggy, hazy, which is understandable. That's how all plans start at the beginning. But if you bring a copywriter on at that point, you are going to confuse them. It's going to be expensive because you're going to have to be sending them down roads and then bringing them back and starting new projects. And it's just not a great place to start from. Conversely, when you have a good sense of, okay, the projects that I want to do are, I want to do an email funnel. I want to do a sales page. I want to do a video, and I want to do an opt-in page, just for example there. Then you can talk to a copywriter, let them know what your plans are. And again, of course, talk about who your target audience is, who you will be, what you will be selling them, what the desired action is at each point of the customer journey. You're going to end up with a much, much better result. You're going to have a much better interaction with your copywriter. And, quite frankly, sometimes it can be the newer copywriters, the copywriters who aren't at expert level yet, who are willing to take on the kind of messier projects because they just really want the work and they want the experience. And that's fantastic. But often the more expert level copywriters will see that things are a little bit chaotic and won't be willing to work with you.
Or they'll ask the right questions to be able to work with you. And for those listening to this episode when it comes out, next week, our episode will be about hiring a copywriter and how to do that in that process. So stay tuned for that and subscribe and make sure you get that episode. And obviously, if you're listening to this in the future, then look for the next episode in the series and you can watch and listen to these back to back. But pertinent to this conversation, experienced copywriters will know what questions to ask to see if you're the right fit together and that if you're in a place that you can work together. Or they might just give you that good information that you need to kind of go back and say, okay, I need to reassess actually what I actually need from this copywriter, what my hope is to get out of this. And the other thing to think about too, and again, maybe a more experienced copywriter might be able to help guide you with this. Or just give you kind of the information you need to think it through. But one copywriter can't deliver 5 different deliverables at the same time. So if you do need multiple things, you need a welcome series, you need them to help you write a video script, you need them to write ads and opt-in page and all of that sort of thing. Thinking through what is the priority for these projects, because not everything can be just, you can't have everything as a priority. You can't, we always talk about the parallel paths. And if it's one person can't split themselves in two and work on 2 simultaneous projects. Now, of course, maybe they can deliver the first draft of one and start working on the other. And then when they're revising the first project, you're looking at their first draft of the next project and that sort of thing. Absolutely. But there should be an order of operations of what do I need to keep going? Is it the welcome series that I need to get first? And then I can start implementing that into my on the back end and adding, if they're images and testimonies or things like that you're adding to the emails that you can work on while the copywriter's working on other projects. So I think knowing what your projects are, but also what the priority is for each of them.
Yeah, exactly. When you'll need each of those products. Now, that said, once you do have a sense of what the projects are going to be and in what order you need them, at that point, that is the time to bring in a copywriter. I know that some people may be thinking, well, isn't that too early if I'm just getting a sense? The sooner you can bring in a copywriter, again, once you are clear, or at least 90% clear on what it is that you need and in what order, the sooner you can bring in a copywriter, the better. Because again, to Kate's point, a good copywriter is going to come in and ask you some really important questions that are going to end up helping you strategize. They're going to ask you, because in order to write well, they're going to really dig into these projects. They're going to ask you about your target audience. They're going to ask you about the customer journey. They're going to ask you about messaging choices and interactions with your audience and all of that kind of thing. And you may find in that process that these questions may cause you to just maybe make some slight changes. That's a great question. That is something that comes up a lot when we hear from our customers. Maybe that's something we should include in the email series, those kinds of things. But a good copywriter is going to ask you questions that are going to get you to a deeper level of strategy. And you, of course, want to be thinking about those deeper levels of strategy at the beginning of the project. You don't want to bring a copywriter in later and then have to work backwards and go, oh my gosh, I have I had the email funnel built out and now we have to go back and do all this kind of thing. On top of the fact that too, because messaging is so fundamental, it's a lot of the elements of your pieces. Not all of them certainly, but a lot of the elements of your pieces of landing pages, of sales pages, that kind of thing, are going to be driven by the messaging.
And one of the first projects that you might want to work with a copywriter on is having them help you create a tone guide for your business to say, what do we want to sound like? What is our voice? Are we more professional? Are we witty? Are we funny? Are we clever? Are we a little more conversational versus a little more formal in how we speak? How do we speak to our customers? What are some of the word choices? Are there specific words that we use in lieu of other words? It can be something as simple as I had a client once that liked to use the word customer versus client. So they never wanted to use the word client. They wanted to use customer. But it can be all of these things, from something that specific and detailed to the word choices, all the way to just broader messaging points. And we would talk to our customers like this. We would never say it like this. We put everything in the positive, versus the negative. That tone guide, though, is essential, because even if you're planning on doing some work yourself and maybe having a copywriter work on some things, or you feel like, well, I do need all of these deliverables at once, so maybe I'm going to hire multiple copywriters, then you need that tone guide as a foundational document so everyone's working from that same base of, this is how we sound, this is how we communicate. And again, good copywriters with training know how to adapt that brand voice and use that tone guide to then extrapolate it into the other materials that you need created. And so everything sounds like it comes from the same brand, which is essential for your customers to see kind of some of the same messaging in the same way, and to build that trust. Because if they see something said in a way that's very casual and conversational, and something that's a lot more buttoned up and maybe more academic sounding, it's going to be a very confusing experience. They might not even relate that it's the same brand. And they just also might think, oh, this doesn't come across professional. This is not necessarily a company I want to do business with. If they don't, who are they trying to talk to? And are you connecting with the right people?
Yeah. And remember too that tone guide, it's not just for this project. The tone guide is for your company. So it's designed to, yes, to work with this project you're doing now, but also with the projects you do next year and the year after that and the year after that. And maybe, couple years down the road, maybe you want to reevaluate your tone, that kind of thing. But it's really an investment in your branding for the future. Another reason that you want to get a copywriter in sooner than later is that copywriters they're popular. They are essential. They're valuable, which means that they book up. So you might get in touch with a copywriter, or quite frankly, a copywriter might get in touch with you. That will happen sometimes. But you talk to them, you start talking about the project, and you say, all right, great. I'm ready to get started. Yes, that copywriter might not have availability for a couple of weeks, potentially even, a month or two. That's just how it works with any freelancer, frankly. And if you find yourself in the place of, no, I need to get started with your timeline, you didn't leave yourself enough room. If you find yourself in a place that you need to get started, you may not be able to work with the copywriter that you want to work with. You may have to find someone who has immediate availability.
Or you might need to push your timeline back. You might not know whether you want to work with a copywriter or not, but if there's any inkling that you feel like, I might want to hire someone, I think this might be good, it doesn't hurt to have a discovery call with some copywriters that you might be interested in working with. Because the first one you might talk with might not feel like a great fit, but the second one you talk with, it might feel like a great fit. So you might have to have a couple of conversations before you find someone where you're like, ooh, this relationship feels like it'd be the right one, or they just really get my business, or I just liked how they already had ideas and they came to the table and were feeling like a great partner for my business. Now, of course, if you tell that copywriter, yes, I want to move forward and work with you, you don't want to ghost them or not give them what they need to get going. But you can absolutely have those initial conversations and weigh, okay, is this something I want to move forward with or not? And it helps to do that, again, as soon as you kind of have an idea that this might be a resource that you need. And depending on the copywriter, you may be able to work out with them and say, hey, I don't have an exact timeline yet, but I'm thinking around this time, can we follow back up in the future? It's all communication. So just being very transparent with that resource to say whether or not you have a timeline in mind. And maybe you're in April and you're thinking, okay, I don't think I'll have anything till June. Totally fine. Because again, that copywriter is fine if you want to book them at that far out. If you feel like you have a sense of when that timing will be, you can do that.
Yeah. They're not necessarily going to save a spot for you, but they will check back in with you. Yeah. Well, and I want to make sure before we go on to that, you understand that when you're hiring a copywriter, you don't have to hire a copywriter for all of the writing that needs to be done in your business. I know sometimes there's that idea of like, well, if I bring in a copywriter, I have to hand over all of my messaging, and boy, that's expensive. So I should just do it myself. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Certainly if you're flush with cash and you want all that stuff off your plate, then great. But you don't have to. You can choose. Maybe it is just this discrete project, or maybe it's even just a part of this project. I think a good rule of thumb is that hire copywriters for the work that's going to have the most monetary impact. So, as you're looking at everything on your plate, that might be things that more associated with the sales page, or a sales funnel, or even a little bit further up, if the opt-in takes them into a sales sequence, the opt-in page, that kind of thing, anything that you have that facilitates the sale, because you really, really want your best foot forward on those pieces. And of course, you want your best foot forward on everything. Yes, of course. However, we have to make decisions sometimes, and we have to be strategic with how we spend our money sometimes. So you may want to spend your money when it comes to a copywriter on things that are going to earn you money first before you look to hand over other things like maybe the post-purchase email sequence or, your blog posts or things like that don't generate, they're important certainly, but they don't generate you money. And talk to these copywriters because you can work with them in a way that works for you, basically. Our circuit sales system students know that they can hire copywriters who are circuit sales system certified. So they are not only expert copywriters, but they also have a specific expertise within CSS. And they're in our group and they're giving feedback every day. But if people want to hire them in addition to that, they can. We're not the middleman. Get in contact. CSS students can. But what I wanted to say is that sometimes you can hire a copywriter to do the work for you, but sometimes if you're working on something and you feel like you're almost there, but you want another set of eyes, you can hire someone to give you feedback. Now, you have to set the expectations to begin with, certainly. You can't say, I want feedback, and then say, okay, well, how would you write it? That's not fair. And we'll talk a little bit more about editing a little bit further down. But you could hire a copywriter to read over what you have done and give you feedback. Now, I think that's not often how many people go, but know that you have options and you can talk with a copywriter and get their recommendations of how you should move forward or at least how you could move forward.
Yeah, I think the expectation to go in with that, knowing if you do work with someone later on in your process, is that the copywriter might not just be able to kind of make it better. It might not just be something, hey, here it is. Can you make it better? Because again, a good copywriter isn't going to just be looking at the words. They're going to be looking at the strategy behind it. And so if the fundamental strategy and ideas behind the writing aren't strong or the messaging isn't strong, then they'll raise that point with you. And so it might become, okay, I did all this work and they're feeling like this is a really big, for me to make it what you want it's kind of a rewrite because we need to restructure it. The benefit's not clear, or maybe there is no benefit in it, or there's no call to action, or the call to action's not clear. All of these fundamental things that maybe the copywriter is going to notice and recommend. And so the other option too is, okay, you want to write it, but bring them in at the beginning as you're writing to kind of give you feedback in phases along the way. So kind of like a done with you method of, okay, they're not necessarily going to write, but they're going to kind of provide that feedback. So from the get-go, they can point out, hey, what does this mean? And kind of ask the right questions to just guide you on that writing process. I would also recommend, if you're writing out an email series and you are working with a copywriter in this way, outlining first what each message is going to say. So you have a very clear idea of this email is talking about this and this one's talking about this. And of course, maybe there are multiple messages in each email, but there's more of a focus. You have more of a goal and reason. And again, a great copywriter is going to come in and have a creative brief and be able to keep on task to say, okay, for this specific email, what is our goal? What do we want people to do? What's the message we want the customer to take away? Who is the customer? What do they look like? What messages do they need to hear in this moment of where this piece comes within the customer journey? And so creative brief is a tool you can absolutely use if you are doing this yourself. But again, working with a copywriter, they'd be able to come in and make sure that brief is filled out in a way that's going to have maximum impact. So again, they could do that with you and help you fill that out and make sure, again, great copywriter is not just, I want to change the name of copywriter for folks that kind of combine the writing with the strategy and can really be a partner in that whole process with you.
Exactly. And again, the next episode, we'll talk about how to hire copywriters, how to hire skilled copywriters and quite frankly, other freelancers, because the process is very similar, but that is coming up next. So finish this one, make sure you subscribe so you can get the next one or following us. But there's one more point we want to make sure to discuss about bringing in a copywriter earlier than later. Again, once you're solid on the project, but earlier than later, because you can run into a big problem if you start going down the road. You start building out everything, and you have your live date. Maybe you even have a live launch scheduled, something like that, or your beta round begins at a certain point. Well, if you bring in a copywriter too late, you could be setting yourself up for trouble because a copywriter, first of all, like we say, they get booked out. But second of all, they're human, which means that they can't produce something immediately. If you say, oh, well, and I have to have this ready to go by next week, they may not have the time to do that. And on top of the fact too, that remember, when you're working with a copywriter, there should be almost always a round or two of feedback, right? Because your copywriter, as excellent as they are, they're not in your head. And they're going to ask plenty of questions at the beginning of the project, but there won't be things that you even think to tell them until you see a first round of work. And it'll be things that they couldn't have thought to ask you. So there should be some time for a little bit of back and forth. And the problem is as you get closer and closer and closer to a deadline, you've either got a copywriter who is maybe charging you a lot more because it's rush work, quite frankly, as well they should, right? We pay more for rush shipping. You would pay more for rush work from a copywriter or any other kind of freelancer. Or you have a copywriter who is trying to do the best work that they possibly can to hit the deadline. But if you haven't given them enough time, the quality is just naturally going to suffer. That's just how it goes. And as we've said before, messaging is not a place that you can afford for quality to suffer. So to kind of recap, a good copywriter is an amazing partner in your business. And when you find one that you like working with, it could be a relationship that lasts for years, potentially. They truly will be a partner. They will help you strategize. They will cheer your successes just as much as you will. It can be an amazing relationship. But you have to make sure that you set that relationship up well to begin with by bringing them in at the right time, bringing them in for the right things, continuing to clearly communicate with them, give them feedback in the best ways, tell them why something doesn't work instead of just trying to rewrite stuff.
And why things do work, so that they know the most effective points too. Both are equally valuable. Yeah.
Exactly. So we strongly recommend that you at least consider working with an expert copywriter. Even if you are positive that your messaging and you're positive, it always helps to have someone with a different set of eyes and a different brain look at what you've put together and at least give you some feedback, give you some outside perspective. And if you're someone who maybe entrepreneurs maybe leaves your messaging until the last minute because you find it intimidating or you don't like it all that much, a great way to solve that problem is by hiring. And again, I'll say it one more time. If you're like, but how do I hire a copywriter? How do I find one? What's the best way? It's not just asking your friends, hey, do you know any copywriters, your entrepreneur friends? There is a much better system for doing that, for hiring a copywriter and really for hiring any other freelancer. So we will get to that in the next episode. So make sure you hit follow so you don't miss that. And we will catch you in that next episode. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Do you want to learn how to sell and scale your offer on autopilot every single day without the chaos of live launching or the low conversions of Evergreen? Who doesn't, right? Get our free on-demand video training at circuitsalessystem.com/free. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel to make sure you never miss a video. We'll catch you next time.